And remember, Ryan can track this, and he knows who's been watching these videos.
Exactly. Yeah. YouTube
He
analytics
can
are pretty
spot
good.
check you.
Yeah. And I will be. There will be a test. All right, Chuck. Well, here we find ourselves again, preparing to record another episode of Labored Thoughts. And I think that's probably the first time I've ever mentioned the name of the podcast on the podcast. Yeah. So for those of you watching, listening at home, you can mark that down as historic moment. If you've established a drinking game, please tell me you have. Then there you go. That's the first mention of the podcast. Here we are again. We're going to touch on another topic that impacts all of us. We're going to discuss referral. Chuck, why don't you tell us, how we got referral, maybe a little bit of history on it, and bring us up to where we are today.
Okay. Well, the style of referral that we have, the language in the agreement, traces back to a decision by the National Labor Relations Board in the late 1950s called the Mountain Pacific case. Mountain Pacific was a chapter of the Associated General Contractors. They had a case before the NLRB, and it was essentially not about the big part of this decision, but it was about an individual who thought he was mistreated by the referral system that was in place by the general contractors and their local union. Up till that time, there was a continuing debate or question about whether a mandatory exclusive hiring hall was even legal. And the NLRB answered that question through this case that they settled. Interestingly, the decision was later thrown out by the courts because they thought the board had gone too far, that it had become a legislative body rather than just an enforcement body, and that they could not write rules to apply prospectively and say, if you do this, you'll have a legal system. All they were empowered to do was to look at a system that was in place and then decide whether or not it was legal. So although they can't instruct us on how we must pattern our referral system, they can tell us through guidance that if you do these terrible things, we're not going to approve it. Not going to tell you what you have to do, but we can pretty much tell you what you better not do. And that's how they got around that decision. So following the decision in the court case, the building trades unions went to the general counsel of the NLRB with a lot of questions. Essentially, if we do that, would that be considered legal? And the general counsel answered them, pretty much established what it took to have a legal system. And that is the basis on which NECA's attorneys and the IBEW's attorneys got together and designed the referral system that we know and love today.
Interesting. So I guess, like you said, the system that we have started out with a complaint to the NLRB. The NLRB dismissed, or it sounds like they dismissed said complaint and said what was being done was fine. But then the courts got involved and said, no, you're not necessarily enforcing, something here. You're more or less trying to legislate. So they kind of got their hands slapped for overstepping their bounds and were told, you can't design a system for somebody, but you can comment on an existing one. So all the unions got together and, like you said, and said, can we do this? Yes or no? And that produced what we have here. So maybe that's something you can dive into. What are some of the questions, or what are some of the things they ask that the NLRB said yes or no to?
I think the biggest issue in the referral system was the anti-discrimination provisions in the law. You cannot discriminate against someone due to their membership or non-membership in the local union, which is what the unions have been trying to do with the exclusive hiring hall. If you don't belong to the union, you can't participate. Now, I know everybody's gasping and saying, but that's not the way it works. We have book one, we have book two. You have to be a member of the local to be on book one. And that's not true. And you have to be very careful with that. Book one never says you have to be a member of the local union. What it says is if you have graduated from an IBEW NECA apprenticeship program as a journeyman, or you have been certified by the local union as a journeyman, then you get a preference. And the board said that's okay. You can have qualifications for training, for residency, for your tenure, either with an employer or within a particular geographical area. So that's what book one is built on. And book two is similar. It has the same educational requirement, but it doesn't have the tenure or residency requirement. Book three has a lesser educational requirement and no geographic requirement. Book four has essentially no requirements except that you're a warm body and willing to go to work. People always presume that book one is limited to that local union, but it's not. It's anybody who meets these qualifications can sign that book, regardless of membership, because you can't discriminate based on membership.
Yeah, and so that actually goes beyond, the whole right to work states or anything like that. We're not really talking about a right to work law. That's completely
Right.
different. So for anybody listening or watching, we're not really having a right to work discussion here. That provision more or less applies to the employer's ability to employ or continue the employment relationship. What we're talking about here is purely with referral, and what Chuck is saying is that to be eligible, you can't have union membership on that eligibility. If you can discriminate or put in qualifications based off of training or, like Chuck said, tenure or where you live, the geographic area, but you can't discriminate on membership to the local.
We hear the term open shop all the time. Everybody says, well, that's non-union, it's open shop. The corollary term that you don't hear anymore was closed shop.
Right.
Closed shop only allowed people who were already members of the union to be employed. What we now have are what are known as union shops. That's where right to work legislation comes in. In a union shop, you can go to work for the employer before you're a member of the union. But once you become employed, you have a set period of time, 7 or 30 days, depending on what state you're in, where you have to join the union and maintain financial membership. If you don't do that, then the union can ask the employer to terminate you. So we operate in a union shop environment in those states where it's still permitted. Right to work state, you can't even have that requirement, but you can still have a hiring hall.
Right. Yeah. And I think we have 27 right to work states, 28. I have to check the number.
Yeah,
recently.
That's about right. It is the majority now.
Yeah. I'll probably throw a link in the description of this video to the list that I refer to. Getting off topic a little bit, but it's pretty par for the course for us.
Yes.
We've
done well so far.
Exactly. Whenever I'm reviewing agreements, that's actually one of the clauses that I look for. I know a lot of agreements come through with that union security or membership requirement clause, and I always have to note to those areas, especially if they happen to be in a state that is a right to work state, that unless they have a provision in there that says something like unless or as required by law or as allowed by law, that having that clause in the agreement is not worth any more than the toner or the ink on the paper, because it's not enforceable if you're in a right to work state.
But worse than that, it would be illegal.
Right.
So the mere fact that you have it in your agreement puts both the union and the chapter at risk. And we were going to get to this point a little later. But the referral hall is a joint negotiated item. It's not the union's alone. And if the union is not operating it properly, the chapter and or the contractors can be vicariously liable for what the union is doing. So it's incumbent on the chapter to keep track of what the union is doing, how they're interpreting their own rules, how they're applying them to their members. Because just saying we didn't know that was going on probably isn't going to be enough to save you from a lawsuit.
So, PSA here. If you're watching or listening, pause the video right now. Go to that link that I have below. See if you're a right to work state. If you are, check your agreements. Look for that union security clause or any type of clause that says you have to become a member of the local union to maintain employment, regardless of the amount of days. But I guess maybe even on the amount of days, check how many days are on it, because if you are not a right to work state, make sure the days aligns with what your state allows, whether it's, I think you said 7 or 30 days, Chuck. So go check all of that, because like Chuck just said, if that clause appears and you're in a right to work state, not only is it not enforceable, it's illegal, and you bring liability on the chapter, on the employers, and on the union. So we'll wait.
And welcome back.
Yeah, exactly. Welcome back. Thanks for checking. Hopefully all is good. If not, chapter managers, reach out to your field reps. They'll get in touch with me, and I can help you with, whatever process needs to be done to get that corrected. But it's a good thing to check. Can we explore the concept of referral being a jointly negotiated item? Can you maybe expand on that a little bit?
Sure. The union will tell you that the process is theirs and they can do anything they want with it. They can run the referral any way they want. Yeah, the agreement says you can come and look at the books, but we'll let you, but you can only do it on a certain day, whatever. Our interpretation of the law and the rules is that the union cannot change the way they administer their referral. So whatever the status quo is today, if you're a chapter and you haven't challenged it and it's been going on and you know what the rules are, okay, just go from there. You have a copy of those because you're entitled to a copy, and you're required to post a copy in the chapter office, even though you don't refer anybody. And every employer is required to post a copy of the referral rules at the job trailer and in the shop, wherever they normally post employment posters. So those are the rules. The union is not free to make wholesale changes in those rules. Any change they make that's above a ministerial change, like when my old business manager, Bob Knapp, decided to change from a legal size yellow pad to a letter size white pad to keep track of the names on the referral list, that was fine. He could do that. If your local changes computer systems, that's fine. But if they make a change from what we call a day book system to an on-call system, or any of the variety of different ways they actually apportion the jobs, if they only allow contractors to start calling in the morning rather than any time during the day, if they don't fill the call immediately, but instead give themselves 24 or 48 hours to fill the call and do that unilaterally, we think that that's a violation. Whenever there's a change that has any substance, has any material value, affects the way employers do business, the union should bargain those. And if you don't have a copy of the rules, you don't know if they're changing them or not.
So you're going to be pausing this video a lot. Now's a good time to pause the video again. check to see if you have a copy of the referral rules for however many local unions are in your chapter's jurisdiction. If you don't have a copy, you are within your rights to request said copy. Check to see if you have them posted at the chapter. If not, go do all that. It might not be a bad idea to draft up a little notice, maybe remind your employers from time to time of their responsibility under the agreement to have this posted at the job trailer and where they normally post their employment posters at their shops. Just a little friendly reminder. So we'll wait right here while you go take care of all that, and we'll be ready to continue this discussion when you get back. Let's talk a little bit, Chuck, about what you actually just brought up there was the different methods or processes for operating referral. You said, you had a daybook system or an on-call system. So can you cover briefly just some of the different ways a local union can implement or operate the referral procedure?
They keep what we call a book, some kind of ledger, whether it's paper or computer, that lists the names in order of anyone who's available for work. Then an employer makes their request to the union for however many workers they want. The union goes to that list and they start with number one on the list and start the process. We've got a call, go to this employer. There are systems where they require a certain number on the list, say the top 30 or 40 guys on the list, to physically report to the local union. And then when a call comes in, they will call the individuals out of the room, the meeting room at the union or whatever, and tell them, okay, here's your referral slip, go to Courtney Electric. If you're not there to take that call, you just don't go to work that day. And the idea was to give quick turnaround. You'd get people in the hall. Those who were interested in working that day would go there, and they'd get a job. They'd go in and immediately get referred out and go to the contractor, or often just to the job site, and start to work. Some areas still use that kind of system. Some put calls on the local union's answering machine, and after 5 p.m., workers can call in, find out who's hiring, and then call the union back and tell them whether they're interested in that job or not. And the local will then go down that list in the order that their names appear on the out of work list and refer them to those jobs. Now, I have a problem with that. It takes a long time. The employer calls in on Monday, the union posts the job Monday night, the guys call in either Monday night or starting on Tuesday, and then the union goes through the process of calling them back and they're coming through the office to get their referral and go to work. And the other problem is they're supposed to take these calls, and giving them the option to decline a call is a problem. Now, the IBEW, to its credit, has tried to fix that. They now have rules, say if somebody declines to take a referral or is not available to take that referral, but I forget what they call them, a ding, whatever it is.
I've heard of it called the ding system. Yeah.
So they get to do that twice, and then they get dropped to the bottom of the book. So they can't sit in the number one spot and wait for a good job that they think is coming down the line. They just, if they don't take a couple of jobs, if they don't man the work in their jurisdiction, which is what they're selling to us, then they get bumped to the bottom. Now, there are exceptions. If the guy's on vacation, he can go on vacation. If he's sick, it doesn't count. But if he's just sitting there and continually not making himself available for jobs, just blocking the book by sitting at the top, he's supposed to be moved to the bottom. Now, the important thing to note here, or interesting thing, is when the IBEW announced these rule changes, the international, they just instructed their local unions that you will make these changes. They told NECA National they were doing that, and we said, wait a minute, that's a substantial change to the system we have. That should be negotiated. And the international said, well, we don't agree with you, but what's wrong with what we're doing? And we said, nothing, we like it. So we give you our permission
to do it.
to do that. And then we instructed our local chapters that while they had the right to bargain over this, in our estimation, why we think it's great, go ahead and accept it. So again, we think we can bargain over these things. The IBEW has a slightly differing opinion, but if it's better than what we have, why would you make an issue out of it? If the union streamlines their referral process and it makes it better for the contractors, I certainly wouldn't stand in the way. What I would do as a chapter manager is send a letter to the local union noting that we're aware of this, we agree with it, but our agreement doesn't mean we're waiving our right to bargain over such things in the future.
Okay. Well, so we've covered quite a bit so far. We've got the history of referral. We know it started with essentially a case before the NLRB. Got the courts decided to get involved with it a little bit. Went to more of a you show us the system, we'll tell you if it's right from the NLRB, which led us to what we have today, which is our Category 1 referral. But talking about Category 1 referral, I am aware of some areas that don't necessarily operate according to the Category 1 referral language. So, and I'm sure you are as well. So, could you discuss what these areas do in lieu of the hiring hall?
There are a few areas that had well-established, long-running alternate systems before the case was resolved at the board and before Category 1 language came around. And those areas, their programs were grandfathered in only for those. There's no opportunity now to do anything other than the Category 1. A couple of them that I know about have what is called free solicitation. If a worker is laid off or terminates his relationship with the employer, he is permitted or she is permitted to seek out a job from another employer who's signatory to the agreement. Maybe they worked for him before, maybe they heard good things about him, whatever. They can go and openly solicit another job from an employer. Most areas also have a book system in place, but it's not mandatory. They can sign the book, but they can also go and try to find employment with another contractor directly.
Well, and that's something also to note. And you stated this early on when you when you started discussing the other systems that exist outside of our normal referral. If you were throwing proposals together or getting ready to go into negotiations to put in one of these alternate systems, I'm just going to re-highlight what Chuck said. These these areas have it because it existed before our referral system got put in place. So they were grandfathered in. You're not going to get an alternate to the referral system. So you can go ahead and trash those proposals if you were starting to draw those up. If you have referral, you're staying with referral.
Yeah.
So another topic that you have to talk about almost in the same breath as talking about referral, because it does appear in the referral language. It just happens to be an option that you can put in, and that's reverse layoff. And something I like to have a clarification on that is, Chuck, can you tell us why reverse layoff is written the way it is and why it's so important that if it does go in your agreement, it has to go in verbatim?
Sure. Just like the earlier discussion about non-discrimination, reverse layoff came from the practice of many local unions that when there were travelers in the area, work started to slow up, They would go to the job site or to the employers and say, local jobs for local people, you have to lay anybody from out of town off first. And again, that's a direct violation of the law because it speaks to membership in the local. And in fact, it went farther than that. You had to lay people off who aren't members of this local union. And doesn't matter about their qualifications, doesn't matter about where they came from, doesn't matter about how long they've been here. When you start drawing down on your job, anybody who's not a member of Local 271, they have to be laid off first, and you have to keep 271 people only. Locals were getting in trouble, and I think this may have been subsequent to the case in 59. Locals were still getting in trouble because of their reverse layoff practices, and many times they weren't in the agreement, it's just what they did. IBEW's attorneys and NECA's attorneys again got together. The IBEW wanted to preserve the right in some way to protect local hands against travelers or untrained people. The current system that's in category 2 was devised. Again, it's based on legal factors like training, like tenure, but not based on membership or non-membership in that local union. It's by group. Now, within a group, an employer is free to select who they want. You get to pick and choose within that book. When it gets to book 1, the employer can pick and choose. If you've got somebody in book 1 from your home local and you've got somebody in book 1 who came from another local, the employer can keep the guy from out of town because he was referred from book 1. The issue that comes up with that, when it comes to layoff, how do you determine what book the man is in? Is it the book he was referred out from or what he qualifies for today? Again, our position is not directly in line with the IBEW's. We believe that when the time comes to lay people off, you look at their current qualification. If this individual can go to the hall and sign book 1, then she is a book 1 employee and it's in the protected group, as it were. The IBEW's position is they were referred out as book 2, they're book 2 until they go back to the hall, and then the union will decide if they're book 1 or not. Now, the problem with that is you get a lot of situations where somebody comes in from out of town, they go to work for an employer, times are good, they work there for 2, 5, 10, 20 years for the same employer in that same area, have all the qualifications, but were referred out as book 2 originally. It doesn't make any sense, and I don't think you could justify it in any court that individual was not a book 1 person. The courts would well see that as an attempt to discriminate against that person because they did not come as a member of that local union. Another issue that came up was an individual was moved from one job to another. They were a book 2 and there was no question about it. They got moved to a job that wasn't having a layoff, and then somebody else who was book 1 got laid off, and the union raised an issue about that. But employers are free to move people unless they're doing it solely to defeat referral and the reverse layoff.
So I think we've covered referral quite extensively here. So if you have any questions about referral at this point, go back and rewatch the podcast. And if that doesn't answer your question, reach out to your field rep. I'm sure they'll have the answer. If they don't, they can reach out to us and we can help get any answers that you may have. If you have a unique scenario or story that you want to share about referral, we'd love to hear it. And we'd love to learn from what you guys have experienced out in the field. I'm not sure if we've been issuing homework in the past, but first and foremost, make sure you have a documented copy, or some form of document outlining how referral is being operated in your area. Make sure that procedure is posted in your office, at the local union, and that your employers are posting it, at their job trailers as well as at their shop. Take a look at your agreement, see if you have those union security clauses we talked about. They like to pop up in Article 2, sometimes in Article 3. I've seen them in both of those areas, but they could be anywhere. So look for that language, and then check to see if you're in a right to work state, because you can have some potential issues. So there's your homework. Chuck, I just want to take a moment here to thank you for sharing your knowledge with us again. It's always
Welcome.
appreciated. But thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you got something out of this. I hope these that these do provide you with some information that you need, and that you walk away knowing something that you didn't when you started. Until the next time, you guys stay safe and stay healthy out there.